Hello, I welcome you to this edition of our ICAN on Air program. And today, we take a pause to look inwards at ourselves. Yes, ourselves as professionals, and how we are faring within our new, improved ICAN with same charter, new chapter mantra. Yes, it's trite knowledge that accountancy professionals in business assist with corporate strategy, provide advice, and help businesses to reduce costs, improve their top line, and of course, mitigate risks. As board directors, professional accountants in businesses represent the interests of the owners of the company. I'm talking about the shareholders. And of course, it could be reporting accountants, where their responsibility will be to ensuring the integrity and accuracy of records prepared in accordance with standards for the purpose of audit. And so if we look therefrom as ICAN, today we wish to examine that very important subject. Yes, ICAN. The chartered accountants as value partners of choice, identifying the challenges and the challenging role and the skill sets, and joining me to interrogate how well we are poised and to give practical advice going forward is Olufemi Owoyemi, MNI, FCA, FIOD, FCIB, FCTI, FIIM, FIAPM, FICA. Our guest on a question and answer segment on this program today has built an impeccable portfolio of commercial and management experiences spanning over 3 decades. He is the Institute of Directors, Nigerian representative of the National Action Committee for the implementation of ACFA. Yes, the African Continental Free Trade Area. We shall unveil more on our esteemed guests shortly. Also on this program, today we'll be looking and taking a peep on some of items on our ICAN diary. It gives you a window view of a few things that are on for you to take care of, make a few announcements, and tell you a bit more about our impactful activities. Also, we are going to show you a few adverts to tell you about membership of the Institute of Chartered Accountants at Nigeria. Oh, you just stay connected, and we'll be back with you very shortly. Thank you for staying on, and let me welcome Mr. Olufemi Owoyemi, MNI FCA, to ICAN on Air program. Femi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
You are most welcome. It's nice to have you here. I remember sometime last year to have you. You made such strenuous efforts, traveling by road all the way from Jos, traveling in the night. You got to Lagos, and for one reason or the other, you were not able to make it. Well, we gave that.
I was one out, almost like today, right now.
I can just imagine. You're most welcome, my dear brother. And looking at it, the topic for today, looking at chartered accountants, value partners, we in ICAN. And to frame how this will go, I like to set the tone by asking you, when you help chartered accountants, or that chartered accountant is involved in an activity, in a project, or in an endeavor, what comes to your mind?
Well, whenever the word chartered accountant or the accountancy profession is mentioned, there are a few things that come to mind. One, credibility, integrity. Most importantly, the fact that there comes in the sense of the listener, a sense of reliability on those financial statements. And if at all there's anything that has re-emphasized that, is in fact the negatives that have gone wrong. Rather than diminish the accounting profession, it has naturally accentuated the premium you place on the fact that was this work provided by a certified accountant. That is what comes to mind.
Beautiful. Nice to frame it that way. So let's take a step back a little and look at IFAC. And by IFAC, for those who may not know, is the International Federation of Accountants, that global body that regulates the accountancy profession. And IFAC strongly believes that a chartered accountant must defend the public interest. Must defend the public interest. Mr. Owoyemi, what does this mean?
No, that is a very interesting one. IFAC has always been playing a very strong role. I think there was a period about a decade ago that was challenged in terms of its relevance with the advent of the CFAs and every other profession. But quickly, everybody realized that there were specific rules for everybody within the value chain of the credibility and governance scheme. IFAC saying that the chartered accountant must defend the public interest is actually almost stating the obvious. It goes back to the days of Father Luca Pacioli, where we started bookkeeping on its own. It goes back to the Headley-Bryan principle. It goes back to those very tenets upon which the accounting profession was actually established, which means that the accountant is expected to provide sound financial and non-financial reporting and analysis to all stakeholders. In fact, it is that stakeholders' point that has created the development around the accountancy profession, in which the stakeholders to which the accountant is expected to report to keeps on expanding: investors, consumers, suppliers, and other consumers of accounting information. So financial statement, be it audit reports, tax returns, liquidation accounts, or what have you, must be prepared and presented faithfully, showing true and fair, not correct and accurate. I think that's the point. A true and fair view of the business, so that the accounts may help people realize the broader interests of society. And I think the challenge is always about true and fair versus correct and accurate. But then the question is about who are the people, who are the accountants really that we are talking about.
Oh, yes, taking it out of my mouth. Who is a chartered accountant? What does it take to be a chartered accountant? And what qualifies him for the roles like you have described?
Well, there's only a basic thing. You use the two critical words: a certified accountant, a chartered accountant, and then you use the word qualification. And that is basically the whole truth about it all. That the accountant is one that has had 3 years of audit and tax training. Most importantly, he has qualified, he has been certified, he went through a period of education. In fact, in my own case, maybe this is something I also use in my office right now. We went through what they call articleship for those of us who were lucky to work in the professional practice. The articleship was one of the most important and foundation-laying processes, whereby no matter the education you had, you went through a hand-holding and mentoring and training process, more or less like what you call the apprenticeship, the venture capitalist type apprenticeship, whereby you are trained on every critical component of the profession, be it from you becoming an entrepreneur later, that means you become a professional accountant, but you know the rudiments of the accounting profession, and sometimes it takes 3 to 5 years. Even though those have changed with time, and we don't need to stay 3 to 5 years, but then there is a minimum amount of time you stay in, and then you are certified as an accountant. In some cases, you do an exam to be a certified public accountant, like in the US, for example. But here, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria remains the only credible body, even though we have also another body called the ANAN, which basically, if you take time to study the history as well, was a reaction to this particular important question you raised. But I think there is some level of understanding that has grown around that irrespective of what it is, the chartered bodies allowed are two, but then we also understand that we take exams in the United Kingdom through the ACCA exams. And as you find out, the more interesting thing that you must find out, and which suits this topic, is that the profession is moving away from a silo-based profession, whereby you just learn just one thing. Organizations and their requirements require you to be specialized in that area, but to have knowledge in the other area. So let me just leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owoyemi, for those insights. And if I look back in 2013, we had Peter Baker, then a CEO of World Business Council on Sustainable Development, gave an opinion, and he said professional accountants will save the world. Professional accountants will save the world. I ask you, Mr. Owoyemi, do you share this perspective? And how might this be?
Okay, so you use two keywords there. You use the one opinion, then you also use the word perspective. The first is that as regards an opinion, most professionals actually end up having gone through a body of work and steps and sequences, come to a position whereby they can offer a professional opinion. But then the perspective is a different thing. The perspective is based on my own sets of evidence and what I see. But I personally believe that Peter Baker and his work, very wonderful work he's been doing with the World Business Council of Sustainable Development, whom I follow, was actually talking about what we discussed earlier, the larger responsibility of the accounting profession in the modern world, i.e., with specific reference to climate change. It was focused around climate change. I believe, if I'm correct, that particular statement relates to the climate change, whereby he said that public and private policy makers, such as ICAN, ANAN, CIMA, might need to develop stronger and unified, I believe, environmental, social, and governance reporting framework, hoping that such a move would help to expand the larger responsibility which IFAC has been doing to strengthen environmental sustainability. But you see, those are low-level problems they have over there. The problems we have in Nigeria is different. Over there, those problems they are worried about climate change. We don't have such an issue. Climate change is not a major problem with us in Nigeria. But we do have a problem. That is an embarrassment that in a country where corruption is so rife, that governments after governments continue to fight over it. The accounting profession hasn't been able to deal with that. We're not able to fully resolve the questions around the Auditor General's report, or even to coalesce an opinion that deals with that. And for us, in developing our environmental and sustainable goals, like environmental, social, and governance goals, the ECG framework, which I believe Peter Baker was talking about, we would have to reinvent our own. So it goes to the question of adapting those kind of frameworks or adopting them. My position has always been that we should learn how to adapt those frameworks to suit our own high level problems here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for those insights that you've given the perspective, looking at the higher challenge that we have in Nigeria. And so, Mr. Owoyemi, sometimes professionals, they work with swagger. Medical doctor work with their swagger. I'm an accountant, I'm proud. And this saying that says, without accounting, there can't be accountability. Without accounting, there can't be accountability. How thought-provoking is this statement?
Well, if you want to take that position and you are talking about swagger, then you can keep your swagger. But then the reality is that without accountants, we have technology. I can deconstruct a system in such that I can produce the level and value chain of the accounting profession, from bookkeeping, transaction management, management accounting reporting, internal control, financial reporting, submission of reports. I can find an AI system today that will help me to put it together. In fact, within those value chain, there are what you call software levels. And I think the challenge is going ahead, whereby we are moving away from software, we are moving towards the integrated financial function. So accounting exists within the financial function. Don't forget that the frauds and whatever we talk about that occurs, let me not use the word fraud, that the corruption that pervades in our society that we talk about is not so much of a chart of accounts failure or the accounting professional failure. It's a governance failure. And so the body of governance around the whole financial structure in an organization, be it compliance, be it reporting, be it, has to do a lot more than just the accountant. So the swagger by accountants should be limited, should be moderated, because the profession right now is getting very fluid. There's a fine line. For example, if you take a look at the securities business, where you used to have stockbrokers, it's not a stockbrokers per se going to evolve. What you have is security practitioners who deal with securities and so on. There will be emphasis around that area and it's fluid. And it's the same thing we look at the accounting profession. What organizations are looking for is looking for the head of the financial information function. So you see the move from head of accounts to departmental head of account. We are moving towards CFO, and you see a new move to certified information officer. Now, most guys who become information officer are tech-based, but then at the end of the day, the movement towards financial information into data means that that profession will be subsumed, because at the end of the day, what you need is to interpret that financial information. The process of gathering, putting together, assembling, and putting it into boxes can be structured in a financial using technology. So technology is not adversarial. Your swagger comes from your ability not to be a computer assistant audit professional, but to be a financial information officer who embraces technology ab initio in order to discharge its own value within the organization system. So I'm sorry, Mr. Fatuke, if I did not, I'm not sounding like, how do I put it, making it fun. But
Mr. Owoyemi, you've just sounded like me. I started by saying I go with swagger because I have the knowledge, I have the technology.
Okay,
I
yeah,
have
go ahead. Yeah,
the
so I have swagger. So I have swagger.
la. Like we say, it's garbage in, garbage out. And
Yeah.
the new improved ICAN, with the way that I know we are going, maybe work in progress to quite a number of people, has to be technology enabled, understand the numbers, and the way you have just mentioned it, into entrepreneurship, into core. When I say core understanding of the fact that you can audit through the computer.
I think the key, the key point, sir. I think the key point, sir, is that what is the value a certified accountant who has gone through training or who intends to join the profession? What is the value do you represent for business? Let me crack a joke with you. As I was growing up in the profession, I suddenly made a change. When we started almost 30 or something years ago, odd years ago, we always knew that the accountant was either going to be either MD or acting MD at some point in time. But if you look at the trend for over the last 4 decades, very few accountants ever become the CEO of a fast-moving consumer goods business, for example.
Right.
The chances that he will become a CEO of a technology company is limited. He can be a CEO of a bank. He can, if he has multiple experience, he can be a CEO of an audit firm or whatever. The growth part, the career part, is almost caving in. Yeah, because the skill set required are different. It's not that technologies are disrupting the profession. The profession has been able to embrace new technology as we move on, and it has changed. For example, if you look at valuation models right now, valuation models for most companies now are being changed as much as possible. You find the interplay for academic accountants also rising as well. So there are aspects within the value chain of the profession for which there is an ascendancy, and there in some aspect there is a less requirement for that, because we can codify it, we can structure it, we can make it into something that can be predictable, more efficient, and whatever. After all, the goal of the accountant is to provide information that allows a company to become more efficient in what it does, become more productive. And so the profession cannot hold that productivity question down. But then in a larger society where we spoke about environmental, social, and governance issues that we spoke about, which you mentioned that Peter Bakker was talking about, and for which I know the IFAC presidency and the council, including the ICAN presidency itself, has been focused on, there needs to be a larger conversation. Why is it that people coming to the accounting profession, they can't get briefs, they can't get jobs, they can't get whatever? And I think those are the things that would emerge, hopefully within the short period we have to talk about it.
Super. I can't agree any less with you. But then, due to the global dynamics of economies and the speed which technology are evolving, which you already have made an allusions to, are chartered accountants living up to the dynamics and the changes? I know you already spoke about that, because we need to widen our horizon. And should they not be drivers of this change rather than being reactors to it?
Okay. So on the one hand, the accounting profession has done very well. Most of them are leading in terms of the adaptive changes to what I call the essential day-to-day operations of accountants in forms of automation and leveraging some accounting software and platforms. Most of what chartered accountants are doing today is in this form, right? But on the other hand, there's the real disruptive change that has the potential to radically transform the professions. And this is where the chartered accountants are here to live up to this dynamic. And I go back to what I said. What is the value proposition for you recruiting an accountant in today's world? So again, is it sectorally driven, or is it just a dynamic of our environment? So since we are talking about Nigeria, so let us localize the conversation. In the Nigerian environment today, you need a jack of all trades as your accountant, somebody to help you to do to prepare you for audit in respect of all your compliance. You need somebody to check against the incidents of where there is internal collision or certain things that cause problems. So you need your internal audit function. You need somebody to help you prepare the books, just to give you your management accounts to let you know where you are doing. You need somebody to provide performance analysis for you, just to let you know where we're doing well, where we're not doing well. And it is in that area that I believe where the real challenge is. Because when you are using Power BI, for example, or you are using different things other than accounting software, business analytics becomes not an addendum to the profession, but a minimum requirement within the profession. For example, how do we present this business analytics in such a way that we have to go back to the chart of accounts to restructure the book in order to make sure that it meets the compliance requirements by law, by rules, and by practice, but also, most importantly, meets the need for business to aggregate data and interpret it in a way that makes everybody more efficient. For example, take a little thing like banking application. Not where the days where you have to approve the money, but because you are scared your accountant is stealing money, you go through, accountant will sign, we bring it to the departmental head, you go to the MD, you know, those kind of things. Now everything can be done electronically. So what is the accounting profession able to do to make sure that I can sign money electronically, which means that the money is gone immediately? And because of service failures within the banking industry, and I've said that, your money is gone if there was a loss or an error or whatever. How do you therefore build up such a way you do that? Because once you do that, you don't need the accounting profession, because All your financial accounts have been processed. You know your position. You get real-time financial position. So when you need the accountant who says he's sleeping late to provide work, no, those accountants will not be adding value to the company. But what he then needs to do is that how do we understand technology? Now, if you have an accountant, therefore, who has technological insight, he is therefore able to bring in what you call analytics officer working under him. So he's able to help him process all this, including writing programs that would enable him answer either an ad hoc question in the organization, adjust performance reporting to suit changing environment, or most likely in the way we do things, begin to interpret for him issues like tax implication, cost-benefit analysis, and so on. So the whole idea is that, yes, you could have a management accountant in manufacturing, and then you had a financial accountant. But if you look at the whole manufacturing process, change as far back as when we started total quality management, there were convergent situations. And over time, we've actually adjusted the whole manufacturing value chain that we do not need to separate the management accounting and financial accounting as two separate entities anymore. They are built into the project conceptualization stage. So when you are doing a business justification report, all your management accounting and financial accounting is done. So all you just need is for somebody to make sure that you were correct. And that's where you go to business analytics per se. And so for me, those are the dynamics that I see. I hope I didn't say, I didn't sound too technical.
No, you are not. Oh, you are not technical. ICAN is taking us to that level, raising the bar, analytics, being able to interpret, and then using technology. It goes without saying. Now, Mr. Owoyemi, I'm going to pull you back a little because I know in our audience are students. I know we have economists.
Oh yes.
What have you? And I just wanted to pull it back, and at the risk of having to repeat to delineate for understanding, because we know we've always been told that seasoned accountants, their job might be too burdensome. We've talked about efficiency and effectiveness, which should be the goal. Will you say that chartered accountants also have fiduciary roles to play in the lives of individuals and corporate citizens and even nations? Okay, yes. Actually, will you say that chartered accountants have fiduciary roles, say, to play in the lives of corporate organizations,
excellent,
individuals, citizens, and even nations?
It does. Excellent. It does. In actual fact, no matter what happens in technology or whatever, I think the place where the public gets a lot of comfort is the accountant fiduciary role and responsibility. Over time, with all the changes in technology, that hasn't changed significantly. In fact, I think the standards are a bit more higher. And I think this is where I believe that the value proposition for the profession remains sacrosanct. Technology can replace that.
Super.
Technology
Fantastic. Excellent. It goes back to my point, garbage in, garbage out, but full understanding. And I know you mentioned earlier articleship, somebody holding you by the hand, guiding you under strict discipline to be efficiently effective. And I know that by their training, chartered accountants are positioned to instill financial sanity, of course, add value to lives of individuals and corporates, like you just mentioned. But with these changing rules that we are talking about, is there a minimum post-qualification skill sets that every chartered accountant must have? And then, of course, please let me just add this. If that is so, how can they enhance these skill sets to remain relevant in the scheme of things?
Well, your question is very, very solid. Undeniably, any forward-looking accountant, either be at the training level or even at the senior level, must understand this thing. And I believe the ICAN Institute understand this. That's where they came up with what we call the mandatory continuing professional training schemes, which means that any forward-looking accountant must understand they need to be technology savvy. But you see, we all have different adaptability skills, capabilities within ourselves. So that means that you need not be the IT guru that does this thing, but you must have an idea of what the information value chain is in your institution, enough for you to know what to listen to know who to talk to know where to go. For example, accountants may need to shift their focus on skills that align with emerging technologies as a post-qualification skill set. But in a situation whereby accountants actually qualify, some are looking for jobs, some are not even able to, even those who are in jobs are not able to get enough briefs. You can imagine the challenge that poses for them, that the enthusiasm to take those other training is not. One of the reasons, therefore, why I accepted to do this radio show was to discuss this thing, and hopefully during this conversation, we can raise the conversations. I may not have all the answers, and through this conversation, we may learn it. And so sometimes, every time we talk about change, it has not worked out very well for most people. You remember 20 or 30 something years back when we were talking about computer-assisted audit techniques. Not too many people changed in audit to the computer-assisted audit technique. We were running a computer-assisted environment with a traditional mindset. In a digital age, most of the models of which we are conducting the audit is reflective of the environment you find yourself. Now, no matter how good or how savvy you are, you go into the field to do an audit for somebody, and it's virtually keeping manual records. You can't even, what do you do with all your technology knowledge? You see how to help that person. So again, this is where I'm saying that the accountancy profession is also able to move as fast as the industry is able to move. But here is the challenge, and I think this is the bottom line of our conversation, that the rate of change outside must not be greater than the rate of change within the profession. So once the profession changes, it then becomes the one who is setting standards by helping organizations to move towards conversion of their manual process into the others. And so where we say there is no job, we can then create job by ensuring that we also support the organizations like we do in so many other areas, where we come up with a change that would change within. Who have a chartered working for you, who is savvy, will help your organization move and transit forward, if only in that, just that financial position, and create some form of compelling narrative that helps you change. An organization or a body like ours, and I believe there's a number of those in the council and those in the profession who are doing incredibly great things, must understand that there is an unwritten responsibility that we can only expand the profession by adding value to ourselves and make sure that the rate of change within the profession is far higher than the rate of change outside. Thank you.
Thank you. The rate of change within us is faster than the rate of change outside the profession. If you are just joining us, I've been fielding questions to Olufemi, Owoyemi, MNI, FCA. We'll be looking at this topic of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Within it, the Chartered Accountants as a value partner of choice, identifying skill sets and changing roles. We're going to go on break very briefly. And when we come back, please, if you have questions, feel free to ask and we'll trash them. Please hang on, stay back, go on a short break, and we'll be back with you very shortly. You are welcome back, and thanks for staying on. Yes, we saw that flash on our diary. ABWA, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the Association of the Commission will be holding the second ABWA Congress. And our president, Mrs. Comfort Olufemi, FCA, MNI, is going to be one of the discussants. Again, I like to let our professionals know and the friends of the profession that the ICAN's 52nd annual accountants conference will take place between 10th and 14th October, year 2022. Please, let's block our diaries and get set for more that is going to come here. I have Matthew Iriogbe back here with us. Mr. Owoyemi is giving kudos. The well said, sir, at the rate of change, President. More than the rate of change. Oh, he's quoting. Is one of our quotable quotes. Hope we'll have more questions from our online participants. What I'd like to ask you, Mr. Owoyemi, that given the economic and financial challenges, in fact, that's where you started from. Talk about the big C, the corruption that our nation is facing. What roles can chartered accountants play to assist the government to overcome them and reset the nation on the path to prosperity?
Well, sometimes, so this kind of question and answer is that some of us who are privileged to be invited as guests, we should not fail to understand that we are just one amongst many people, and that we do not have all the answers ourselves. But if it is therefore permissible for me to offer my position and to be consistent with my value system, the first thing is that the accountancy profession must, first and foremost, be true to itself. A government, you do not have to like a government, you do not have to be just the same way we are as professionals. We just have to understand that certain rules and certain positions are in place. The first is our commitment to the charter, the basis upon which we are called charter. So that means there must be consequences for actions. There must be reward for
good behavior.
Yeah. There must be reward for those who follow the rules, and there must be sanctions for those who break it. When you operate in a position whereby access means privilege, where privilege means non-adherence to the rules, then we are setting the profession up for a major problem. One of the few areas is if you go back to those days, whereby the profession can offer its opinion as at when it is. And it's not just the accounting profession. I think generally in the country, people have been so beaten up so much that everybody just wants to maintain a veneer of respectability without conflict. Well, conflict in itself is a major criteria for how professionalism excel. So I will look three major areas where we can be useful for the government. One is in observance of this code of ethics and corporate governance rule by the Financial Reporting Council. And that is a very thorny issue because the way Financial Reporting Council also emerged must have caught the profession unawares. But again, it doesn't matter how it emerged, it is here to stay. The adherence to those code of ethics must be such that it's very, very sine qua non to the ability to instill the ESG rules in the environment. Secondly, we must understand that the role we have to play where the real critical activity is in, which is in the MSME space, is that they cannot afford the things that led to the Finance Act were such that nobody can afford to comply with the CAC rules of preparing audited accountant when you are just barely managing to survive your business. The cost of doing business conversation is equally an issue that relates to the accounting profession as well. Because part of the requirements for you that guarantees you a job for us as accountants is part of that thing. And people can barely afford it. So people are cutting corners. And guess what? They're either using quacks or they're using accountants who are able to compromise themselves. And we cannot pretend that this does not exist. Also, third, if you look at the whole system around our taxation, the concept of, including, I believe I have a farm also who also is involved in farmer. That very process itself, it's unusual. But if it is a part of where we are getting towards what I call the adoption versus adaptability value proposition, and that this is what is unique to us, then the accounting profession must be able to work with the Institute of Taxation to set guidelines around it. Right now, it's a all commerce affair without guardrails. And as such, you will find that the profession is in such a way a permissive, should I call it permissive enabler in the whole value chain. The fourth point will be around, and I'm just going to limit myself to that, will be around the concept of where the Auditor General issues a report. Be it the Auditor General of the Federation, you never hear a report from the Auditor General of the state, for example. But the Institute of Chartered Accountants was doing something very good. And permit me, I was away for 1 year ago, so I haven't caught up on that. Is that we used to do this accountability index across the state.
Yes.
Very good thing. And that thing should not be taken lightly. It should be sustainable. It should have more partners, because it is the whole idea in which you measure how much they rate the profession itself. In fact, those things should include indices like what has happened to the Auditor General's report in the state, what has happened to the Auditor General's report in the Federation. Because if nothing is being done to the Auditor General's profession and the profession is unable to react to it, then you weaken the whole governance structure in itself for the sovereign as a whole. Let me leave it at that.
Yes, short enough to give us great peep into the larger. And of course, I know the new improved ICAN of old charter. New charter is also looking at our profession and professionals. How will we situate ourselves to be much more efficient? Our sir, our chief samurai, Professor Kumshe, made that clarification to the whole world. I'm sure our legislators, the state governors, spoke about the index that we promoted, and which I agree with you absolutely. We should sustain. I must continue to listen. It will be a still voice from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and I believe they will listen. Now, Mr. Owoyemi, I will not. Let me make this very open. I will not allow you to go without throwing you a bit of a big box. Yeah, put you a bit under the box. Please fasten your seatbelt. Let's look at this. Generally, where there are financial failures in corporate entities and even national economics, chartered accountants are quickly and mostly blamed, usually fingered, perhaps for reasons that should be much more obvious than we want to agree. And so I want to take you on this little game trajectory. And that on a blame scale of 0% to 100%, where will you place or situate the chartered accountants in this malaise?
In actual fact, I very much love this question. The part that you would have to excuse me is on the blame game. I would rather use the word responsibility. Here is on the one step. If you look at where we started, if you want to be seen and regarded for your fiduciary roles, which you like on the one hand, you must be ready to take the responsibility demand for where there are failures in the system. If you want to be given regard for being a critical value creator in the organization, then you must therefore be. So whenever you say, yes, we want to do that, we can do it, but then they do not allow us to do it in the company, that in itself becomes a conundrum of sorts. Why do I say so? The conundrum of sorts is that at that stage, the accounting profession has clear guidelines on what to do. Now, it's not so easy for you to just pick up your biro and resign. So you end up staying in there. Those things are done. You've written the reports. There's nobody taking it off. You've gone through your audit committee. You've gone through your management processes. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I do.
But then at the end of the day, they still went ahead and did what they had to do. you don't have any backup with your institute. And by the way, I've been privileged to join the institute in some of its activities. I've been privileged to work with some council members, and I do believe that this institute is forward-looking and forward-thinking. I think at some point we must go into the room and tell ourselves some common truth. That if I do not have any safety net for me within the profession where I can be protected, and the truth of the matter is, how can the institute even protect me? To say to the company that you know, those are the questions. So if you look at the blame game, that's just the normal game. But the real game is that if I do not have protection, I cannot function and be the best I can. Because within a governance system, you cannot be the best in terms of governance in an atmosphere where governance is not a value proposition to them.
Wow. So on a responsibility scale, the chartered accountants will be 50% in your scale?
No, they have the full responsibility because you cannot claim the
100%.
You cannot claim the benefit of the responsibility and ignore the consequence of the irresponsible outcomes.
Okay, let's go to the next stage. On a scale of 0% to 100%, where will you place or situate persons with governance responsibilities?
Oh, then it's the same equation. You see, there are no different scales. No, there are no different scales. You know, I used a terminology. I said you cannot ignore the benefits that come with those responsibilities and ignore the consequences that come from the irresponsible outcomes.
Super.
And so, because all of us within that value chain, the accountants, those who have governance responsibility, we are all responsible. But let the accountants deal with their own part first. Right. Then we can hold them to a higher standard.
Super. And so with society of values, and time will always not be our friend. I know we had a question from Samson, and I think you already trashed it, that accountants who don't have jobs now, what should they be doing to upskill? Okay. You shouldn't be jobless if you think outside. Oh, it's just been answered for you, that you shouldn't be jobless if you think outside the box, as you are a professional.
Well, it's not so easy to think outside the box. Let me tell you, when you are jobless, you know, people say these things so easily. If anybody has been poor and not having money, go and tell him to think outside the box. But the truth of the matter is that you have to eliminate that box on its own entirely. You just have to think about value. So what do I do to make sure this man's business is okay? If you can just answer that simple question, if it means you help him from bookkeeping, it's not, maybe he needs a head of finance, well, all he just needs is a bookkeeper. You start with that and demonstrate value, and then you grow. I've had to lose job and change jobs, and I had to start from the scratch as well. So if I sound very uncompromising, it's because it is what it is.
Super. And because, like I said, time is not a friend, will you have your final word on this very important topic? Just 1 minute.
Okay, so the final word is that there is no final word. A profession is an ever-evolving one. And the conversations like this are necessary and important, that we must all find ways to say, what have you learned? What have you learned? And I think that's where experience sharing and perspective sharing. But as we do that, please let us not do it in a way whereby we are justifying absurdity. The truth of the matter is that this is a very beautiful and noble profession. The Institute is trying as much as possible, but then we can do much more, because to whom much is given, much is expected. A few of us have the responsibility of carrying the torch, and I hope we can do it very well. Thank you for inviting me. I hope.
Beautiful. The thanks goes to you, and the thanks goes to our online participants. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and we're going to be calling more on you as joint builders, shifting the paradigm and upscaling internally, making sure we get things right so that more value can come to us. And if you have been with us, I've been with Mr. Owoyemi, MNI, FCA, has been sharing the next level with us. I thank our team who are behind the screen, making sure that we're able to project this. And this is not going to be the final, as we have done this on a regular basis. We are going to have our next offering on Tuesday, February 15, year 2022. And it will be also on our ICAN social media platforms. Please click, please like, so that you can get constant reminders. The topic we are going to be looking at will be Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria and the Nigerian Accountant. And guesting with us will be Ambassador Shuaibu Adamu Ahmed, Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of the Financial Reporting Council. He, between 1997 and 1999, was with Zachary and Co., an indigenous audit and business advisory firm based in Kano, which he co-founded precisely in 1997 with Mr. Zachary, Alhaji Zachary Ismaila, the former ICAN president. He became the first ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to the state of Qatar between 2012 and 2015, a position he held with distinction, earning him the highest diplomatic honor of the Sash of Merit by the state of Qatar. And let me leave you with my usual quote. And it says, Chartered Accountancy, or what you call CA. Chartered Accountancy means charismatic amalgamation of great experiences of life. I am a chartered accountant. I'm happy with it. That quote is attributable to Vikram Verma, in his iconic book, Guru with Guitar. I always say that you should be the change that you like to see. I can. Yes, we can. And until we come your way again on Tuesday, February 15, 2022, I remain Akifatumke, your anchor, ICAN on Air. Bye for now.